They went to Hawaii without me and left their child behind. My life used to be quiet, too quiet maybe. A small house, a predictable routine, and a marriage I thought was steady. But beneath it all was a wound that wouldn't heal 8 years of trying for a child and failing every month. My bathroom drawer overflowed with pregnancy tests, each one a silent verdict, not this time. At first, my husband comforted me. Then the cracks appeared jokes about how I mothered the dog, comments about how maybe my body wasn't built for this. They weren't daggers, but they cut all the same. I told myself loyalty meant pushing through. But one night at 2:07 a.m., I saw a text light up his phone. The kids miss you tonight. Are you coming by kids? Plural. I thought it was a mistake until I scrolled. There they were, 2 different women, 2 different homes, children he had fathered. Families he built while I was timing ovulation charts and injections. When I confronted him, he barely flinched. I needed kids, Emily. I wasn't going to waste my life waiting on you. That sentence ended us. The divorce was brutal, reducing 8 years to a ledger. He fought me for furniture he never touched, just so I'd leave with less. When it was done, I felt like half a person. My family wasn't much comfort. My parents offered empty reassurances. My younger sister, Barbara, divorced, dramatic already. A mother threw digs disguised as jokes. You wouldn't understand Emily. Being a mom changes everything. She knew exactly how much that hurt. Barbara was always the golden one, because she gave my parents a granddaughter, a 5-year-old who lit up any room. I adored that little girl. Her laughter made me forget for a moment that my arms were always empty. So when my parents suggested a family trip to Hawaii, I clung to it. Sunshine beaches, my niece's joy, it sounded like healing. Even Barbara smirking, it'll be interesting to see how you handle traveling with a child, couldn't ruin it for me. At the airport, my niece ran into my arms shouting about turtles bigger than she was. Barbara handed me her water bottle request with a casual smile. I said yes without thinking because that's what I do. The line was long, the air smelled of coffee and fried food. A chance encounter with my old roommate delayed me further. We hugged, we talked, she told me I deserved better. By the time I rushed back with the bottle, the gate was nearly empty. And then I saw her. My niece standing alone in the waiting area, clutching her little pink purse with both hands. No Barbara, no parents, just a folded note inside the purse in Barbara's handwriting. Emily, you're always talking about wanting a child. Here's your chance. We changed our flight. Don't worry, we'll have a peaceful vacation. Take good care of her. My blood went cold. My niece's lip trembled. Did mommy leave because I was bad? I knelt, pulling her against me. No, sweetheart, you did nothing wrong. Mommy made a mistake. Ask yourself, what would you do if your own sister abandoned her child like an unwanted suitcase at an airport? Because in that moment, I knew my life wasn't quiet anymore. It was on fire. I brought my niece home that night, a 5-year-old curled on my couch eating mac and cheese, while cartoons filled the silence. I tried to act normal, but my heart kept replaying the image of her standing alone at that gate, clutching her purse like a lifeline. When she finally asked, "When's mommy coming back?" I swallowed hard. I don't know, sweetheart, but you're safe here. Later, after she fell asleep in my spare room, I sat in the kitchen shaking Barbara's note in my hand. She hadn't just left me holding responsibility, she'd left her child to wonder if she was unwanted. That kind of cruelty didn't come from nowhere. So I dialed a number I'd avoided for years, Mark, her ex-husband. The man she'd painted as the villain in every story. When he answered, his voice was wary. "Emily, Barbara left your daughter at the airport." I said the words tumbling out. She boarded a plane to Hawaii with my parents. Your little girl was alone for 30 minutes. If you want to see her, come now. Silence. Then urgency. Text me your address. I'll be there. An hour later, he stood at my door holding a stuffed doll bigger than his daughter. The moment she saw him, she bolted into his arms. Daddy. She squealed, her little legs wrapping around him. He buried his face in her hair, shoulders shaking with sobs. I expected performance. Barbara had always claimed he faked affection. But what I saw was raw and messy. He kissed her cheeks again and again, whispering, "I missed you so much, princess." When she ran off to play with the doll, Mark sat at my kitchen table, eyes heavy with years of exhaustion. "She told you I abandoned them, didn't she?" I hesitated. "She said you cheated, lied, left her to raise your daughter alone." He laughed bitterly. "Of course she did, but it was her. She was cheating on me with more men than I could count. I hired a private investigator. I even had to get a DNA test to know if my daughter was mine. She is, thank God. But do you know what it's like to look at your baby and wonder?" He scrolled through his phone, showing me photo after photo. Barbara kissing men outside bars, sneaking into hotels, stumbling drunk to her car with her child asleep in the back seat. My stomach turned. The woman who mocked me for not being a mother had been gambling with her own daughter's life. "Why didn't you tell us?" I whispered. I thought I was protecting her image, protecting my daughter from shame. But I see now, staying quiet just gave Barbara more power. He looked at me, eyes burning. "Emily, she abandoned our child. I'm filing for custody, but I need your help, your testimony." I thought of my parents, of Barbara's smirk, of my niece's trembling voice asking if she was bad. And I knew the answer. "I'll help you," I said, "whatever it takes." The next morning, my phone rang before the sun even rose. My mother's voice, sharp as a blade. "Emily, what on earth are you doing? Barbara told us everything. You're siding with Mark. After all your sister's been through?" I gripped the phone tighter. "She abandoned her daughter at the airport." "Mom, 30 minutes? Alone. Anything could have happened." "You're exaggerating," she snapped. "Barbara trusted you. She knew you'd be back. Don't twist it into something it's not. I almost laughed bitter hollow. She left her child like luggage, Mom. That's not trust. That's neglect. Her voice dropped cold. Family comes first. Always. If you help Mark, you'll regret it. For a second, I almost wavered. Years of conditioning whispered in my ear. Don't make waves. Be the good daughter. Keep the peace. But then I pictured my niece's wide, tear-filled eyes clutching her pink purse, whispering, "Did Mommy leave because I was bad?" That memory hardened my spine. No, Mom. Child safety comes first. Not Barbara's pride. Not your idea of family loyalty. She hung up. By noon, my father texted me, "If you go through with this, don't bother coming home anymore." The words blurred on my screen. It was final like a guillotine blade. I wasn't just losing my sister, I was losing my parents too. That evening, Mark came over with a stack of documents. Credit card bills showing Barbara blowing child support money on salons, bars, designer clothes. Private investigator reports of nights out photos of her drunk behind the wheel while her daughter slept in the back seat. I wanted to look away. I wanted to pretend it wasn't true. But each receipt, each timestamp, each grainy image screamed the truth I couldn't unsee. "This is what she's been doing," Mark said, voice tight. "While our daughter wore outgrown sneakers, she spent thousands on herself. And your parents didn't? They ever wonder where the money went?" I shook my head, tears hot on my cheeks. They didn't want to see it. Barbara was the golden child. She gave them a granddaughter. That was enough. Mark leaned forward, his voice low. "Emily, the court will listen to you. You're the aunt, the witness. If you testify about the airport, it's done. Barbara won't be able to talk her way out of this." I exhaled slowly. This was the line. If I stepped over it, there was no going back. I wouldn't just be betraying my sister, I'd be declaring war on my parents' favorite child. But then I heard my niece giggling from the living room, brushing her doll's hair safe in my apartment. I looked Mark in the eye. "I'll testify. I'll stand with you. For her." And in that moment, I realized sometimes choosing sides isn't about who you love more. It's about who needs you most. 2 days later, there was a knock on my door. Not Barbara, not my parents. A middle-aged woman in a gray blazer, clipboard in hand. She introduced herself as Mrs. Patterson from Child Protective Services. I felt my stomach twist. "Already Mr. Mark filed an emergency petition," she explained. "I need to see the child's living situation." I led her inside, nerves buzzing. My niece sat on the rug, humming to herself as she dressed her doll in mismatched clothes. She looked up shyly when Mrs. Patterson knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, how are you doing here with your aunt?" the woman asked gently. My niece shrugged, then whispered, "It's safe here? I'm not scared anymore?" The words hit me like a brick. Not scared anymore? She was only 5, but already knew how to name fear. Mrs. Patterson spent an hour in my apartment taking notes, asking questions. Did she sleep through the night? Did she eat regular meals? Did she ask about her mother? She used to every day, I admitted. Now, less and less. She seems calmer here. When the caseworker left, she squeezed my arm. "Thank you for stepping in. It's clear you care about her safety." That night, I tucked my niece into bed. She clutched her doll tight and asked, "Is Mommy coming back tomorrow?" I smoothed her hair. "Not tomorrow, sweetheart. But Daddy's here now. And I'm here? You're safe?" Her eyelids drooped, but before sleep pulled her under, she murmured, "Sometimes Mommy gets really mad. She says if I love Daddy more, she'll go away forever." I froze, hand hovering over her head. My chest ached. No child should carry threats like that. When she finally drifted off, I stood in the dark room whispering more to myself than to her. "Not anymore. You'll never be alone. Not ever again." The next morning, my phone rang. My mother's voice, sharp and unforgiving. "Emily, you stop this right now. Barbara made a mistake, but you don't destroy your own family over it." "Destroy," I snapped. "She abandoned her child. She drove drunk with her in the car. And you still defend her family comes first," she shouted. "No," I said, my voice breaking, but firm. "Children come first." I hung up. My hands trembled, but for the first time in years, I felt something strange. Not guilt, not fear. Strength. Because maybe I hadn't chosen this war, but I was going to finish it. The courtroom smelled of varnished wood and old paper, the kind of place where secrets either died quietly or exploded in the open. I sat behind Mark, my niece's tiny hand in mine, while Barbara strutted in, wearing a tailored dress and forced confidence. My parents flanked her like bodyguards. She didn't look like a mother accused of abandonment. She looked like a woman ready to perform. Her lawyer started with a polished narrative. Barbara was misunderstood, overworked, and had trusted her sister in good faith. It was all a miscommunication. She never intended harm. But then, the evidence began. The airport footage flickered on a screen. Barbara, my parents, and my niece walking together. Barbara and my parents boarding the plane. My niece left standing alone, clutching her purse, staring at the crowd. 28 minutes passed in silence. A stranger knelt to ask if she was lost. Finally, I appeared running, scooping her up in my arms. The room stayed quiet, heavy with disbelief. Barbara broke the silence, voice sharp. "This is Emily's fault. She was supposed to get water. She's jealous I have a child and she doesn't." Even her lawyer winced. Then came the private investigator's footage. Barbara stumbling drunk, fumbling for keys, climbing into her car, while her daughter slept in the back seat. Credit card statements showing thousands blown on salons and bars, while her child wore hole-ridden leggings. Each piece of evidence stripped away another layer of her facade. Barbara's composure shattered. She screamed over her lawyer, cursed at Mark, called me a traitor. At one point, she hurled her water bottle across the courtroom. the judge's gavel slamming down in response. "Miss Barbara, control yourself or be held in contempt," the judge warned. Mark's lawyer ended quietly, his voice steady. "This child deserves stability, safety, and a parent who puts her first. That parent is Mr. Mark, not Ms. Barbara." The judge's ruling was swift, cutting like thunder. Based on overwhelming evidence of neglect, endangerment, and abandonment, full custody is awarded to the father. The mother will have no visitation until completing court-mandated treatment. Court adjourned. The gavel fell. Barbara shrieked as officers escorted her out, my parents trailing pale and silent behind. I sat frozen, my niece's hand still gripping mine. I should have felt victory, relief. Instead, I felt the final snap of something breaking forever. Family ties. The courthouse steps were colder than I expected. Reporters weren't there, no cameras flashing, no headlines waiting, just silence. My parents stormed past me without a word. My mother's face rigid with fury, my father's jaw clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grind. Barbara's screams still echoed faintly from the hallway inside. I thought they might look at me, say something, anything. But they didn't. They walked away like strangers. Later that evening, a letter arrived at my apartment. My father's handwriting, sharp, deliberate. "Emily, you are no longer welcome in this family. You betrayed your sister. Do not contact us again." That was it. No love, no history, no acknowledgement of the years I bent over backward trying to be the good daughter. Just exile. For a moment, I sat at my kitchen table with the letter trembling in my hands. Part of me wanted to crumple it, scream, maybe even beg. But when I looked over at the living room, I saw my niece sprawled on the rug, coloring, humming softly to herself. She was safe. She was smiling. The choice was clear. In the weeks that followed, Mark and I built a rhythm. He enrolled her in preschool, the kind with bright murals and teachers who knelt to meet her eyes. He came over for dinners, sometimes bringing takeout, sometimes cooking spaghetti while she danced around the kitchen. On weekends, we took her to the zoo, the park, anywhere that made her laugh. One night, as she held both our hands, swinging them back and forth, she announced proudly, "I have Daddy and Aunt Emily. I'm lucky." The words hit me harder than any insult Barbara had ever thrown. Because in that moment, I knew she was right. She was lucky. And so was I. Sometimes, I thought back to my ex-husband, the man who spat that I was worthless because I couldn't give him children. But watching my niece fall asleep safe and loved in a home we'd created for her, I finally understood motherhood isn't biology. It's love. It's protection. It's choosing a child's needs over your own. And by that definition, I'd been more of a mother in those few months than Barbara had been in 5 years. But even with her gone, a shadow lingered. My parents? Their silence was louder than screams. And in my chest, a question I couldn't silence if blood can turn its back so easily. What does family really mean? Life began to settle into something almost normal, though normal felt like a word from another lifetime. My mornings now started with the sound of little feet padding across my hardwood floors. My niece would climb into my bed, her doll tucked under one arm, whispering, "Wake up, Aunt Emily, it's pancake day." I hadn't cooked pancakes on a weekday since college, but somehow with her, it felt right. Flour dusted across the counter, syrup dripping onto the floor, laughter echoing off walls that had once held only silence. Mark adapted too, though his adjustments were different. I'd see it in the way he looked at her during pickup at preschool, his eyes soft with disbelief, like he couldn't believe she was finally his without condition. He threw himself into being the kind of father she deserved, packing lunches, reading bedtime stories, even learning how to braid hair from a YouTube tutorial that made him curse under his breath. Still in quiet moments, I noticed his guilt. When she hugged him too tight, when she asked why Mommy never called, his face would harden. He'd say little, but his silence said enough. He carried years of being shut out, years of letting Barbara control the narrative. And though he had custody now, part of him still feared she'd find a way back in. As for me, I wrestled with my own ghosts. My parents hadn't reached out once since that letter. Holidays came and went. No phone calls, no invitations. For the first time in my life, the seat at their table that had always been mine was gone. But here's what surprised me. The grief dulled faster than I expected. I thought I'd miss them more, ache for their approval like I always had. Instead, what I missed was the idea of family, the safety net I thought was there, but never really was. One evening, after my niece was tucked in, Mark and I sat on my balcony with mugs of tea. The city hummed faintly below us. He turned to me suddenly. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Regret what?" "Taking this on. Choosing her, choosing us." I thought about the court battles, the letter disowning me, the nights lying awake, wondering if Barbara would show up screaming at my door. Then I thought of my niece's hand slipping into mine at the zoo, of her laughter bubbling through my kitchen, of her whispering, "I love you," when she thought I was already asleep. "No," I said quietly, "not for a second." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. And in that silence, something shifted between us. Not romance, not yet, but a recognition. We weren't just co-parenting. We were rebuilding from ashes, brick by brick, choice by choice. But as steady as things became, the shadow never vanished. Barbara had been quiet since the courtroom outburst. Too quiet. And deep down, I knew my sister well enough to understand silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. And one day, when we least expected it, she would come knocking again. It happened on a Tuesday evening, the kind of ordinary night where nothing was supposed to go wrong. Mark had just picked up our niece from preschool, and she was in my living room, coloring, humming softly to herself. I was chopping vegetables for dinner when the knock came. 3 sharp raps too forceful to be a neighbor or delivery. My stomach dropped. I knew before I opened the door. Barbara stood there, makeup flawless hair, styled a bright scarf thrown around her neck like armor. But her eyes betrayed her bloodshot, jittery burning, with a kind of desperation that made my hands tighten on the doorknob. Emily, she said sweetly, too sweetly. We need to talk. Behind me, my niece peeked from the hallway. Mommy, her voice cracked on the word. Barbara's face shifted instantly, the mask slipping. Baby. She lunged forward, arms wide, but I stepped into the doorway, blocking her path. Not like this, I said firmly. Her smile thinned. Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic. I just want to hug my daughter. Mark appeared, then his entire body tensing. Barbara, you're not allowed here. The court order. I know the damn court order. She snapped, her voice echoing through the hall. But she's my child. Mine, and you can't keep her from me forever. Our niece whimpered behind me. Mark moved quickly, scooping her up and carrying her to her room. She clung to his neck, burying her face in his shoulder, refusing to look at her mother. That sight, her rejecting Barbara, was sharper than any knife. Barbara turned on me, eyes blazing. You think you've won, don't you? You and him playing happy little family with my daughter? You're pathetic, Emily. You couldn't have kids, so you stole mine. Her words sliced into me, aimed precisely at the wound she knew best. I felt heat rise in my chest, but I didn't let it show. I held her gaze and said quietly, I didn't steal anything. You gave her away. Her face twisted, fury and shame colliding. For a moment, she looked like she might strike me, but instead, she hissed, You'll regret this, and stormed down the hall. It was clicking like gunshots. I shut the door, leaning against it, heart pounding. Mark came back, his voice low but steady. She's shaking. She asked if Mommy was going to take her away. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. What did you tell her? That as long as I'm alive, she's safe. But deep inside, I knew Barbara wasn't done. That wasn't a goodbye. It was a warning. Ask yourself, what would you do if the person threatening your peace wasn't a stranger, but your own blood? If the mother of the child you're protecting was also the sister you grew up with? Because for me, the question wasn't if Barbara would try again. It was when and how far she'd go. The next week felt like living inside a storm cloud, always waiting for the next strike of lightning. Barbara didn't come to my door again, but her presence lingered everywhere, like a shadow I couldn't shake. It started with the calls. Unknown numbers at odd hours. When I answered, silence, sometimes breathing faint chilling. When I didn't, voicemails would play snippets of songs she used to sing in high school, almost mocking me. I knew it was her. Who else would twist nostalgia into a weapon? Then came my parents. One night, I found my mother sitting on the steps outside my apartment building. She wasn't alone. My father stood behind her, arms crossed, his silence louder than any words. Emily, my mother began, her voice cracking in a way that used to break me. This has gone too far. Barbara's your sister. She's hurting. She needs her child. I swallowed the rising anger. Her child is safe, finally. You saw what she did. You know the airport footage. You know the drinking, the nights she left her in the car. How do you defend that? She made mistakes, my mother whispered. But don't we all? Don't you remember when you cried after every failed treatment? When you broke dishes in the sink because you thought life was unfair? Should we have judged you as unfit too? That cut deep? It wasn't the same, not even close, but she knew exactly how to wound me. My father finally spoke, his tone ironclad. If you testify again, Emily, don't bother coming back to this family. You'll be dead to us. I stared at him, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who once carried me on his shoulders at a county fair. And now he was threatening to erase me just because I wanted to protect his granddaughter. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table while my niece dreamed peacefully in the next room, Mark dozing in a chair across from me. My parents had chosen their side, Barbara's. That meant war. Barbara escalated too. She filed an emergency petition to modify custody, claiming she had been set up at the airport, that I had deliberately distracted her, so she would miss the flight. She painted herself as the victim, spinning tales about my jealousy, about how I wanted to replace her. At the hearing, her lawyer leaned into it. Your Honor, Emily has long struggled with infertility and an emotional breakdown following her divorce. Is it any surprise she might project those wounds onto her sister's family, overstepping boundaries in a misguided attempt to fill a void? The implication was clear. I wasn't a protector. I was a bitter, broken woman stealing what wasn't mine. I felt every eye in that courtroom on me, burning with judgment. My throat tightened. But when I looked down, my niece's small hand was clutching mine under the table, her trust so absolute it steadied me. So when it was my turn, I stood. My voice shook at first, but then sharpened. I don't need to project anything, Your Honor. I didn't imagine her being left alone at an airport. I didn't imagine her being driven home at 2:00 a.m. while her mother stumbled out of bars. I didn't imagine receipts showing thousands spent on herself while her daughter wore shoes with holes. Those are facts, not my feelings. Facts. The judge's face didn't move, but I saw a flicker, a recognition that truth cuts deeper than theatrics. Still walking out of that courtroom, I knew Barbara wouldn't stop. If she couldn't win legally, she'd come for me another way. And that terrified me more than anything the court could decide. Barbara didn't just lose in court, she unraveled. The first sign came as a whisper in the night. A neighbor knocked on my door, pale, holding up a photo. Emily, I think you dropped this. It was a printout, me and my niece leaving the grocery store, taken from across the parking lot. I hadn't dropped it. Barbara had left it. The next morning, my car tires were slashed. 2 days later, my mailbox was stuffed with shredded photographs of me as a child, family portraits ripped to pieces, fragments of my parents' smiles torn in half. I knew it was her. Nobody else would weaponize memory like that. I called the police, filed reports, handed over every scrap of evidence. They nodded sympathetic, but their words were always the same. We can't prove it was her. Not yet. Mark installed cameras around my apartment. He started sleeping on the couch, a silent guard in the night. I pretended I was calm for my niece, but inside I lived in a state of siege. Every knock at the door jolted me. Every shadow outside the window felt like her. One night, it wasn't paranoia. I woke at 2:13 a.m. to the sound of scraping against the balcony door. My heart froze. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake my niece. Through the curtain, I saw movement. A silhouette. A woman's frame. I whispered Mark. He was already awake, already moving. He opened the curtain just enough for us both to see Barbara crouched outside, fumbling with something in her hands. A key. A crowbar? I couldn't tell. Mark didn't shout. He didn't lunge. He simply grabbed his phone, hit record, then dialed 911. Barbara looked up, caught in the glass reflection, and for a split second, our eyes met. Hers were wild-rimmed with smeared eyeliner, but behind the chaos was something worse, calm determination. She mouthed the words, "She's mine." By the time the police arrived, she was gone. But the video was enough. Trespassing, attempted break-in, violation of the custody ruling. That morning, my phone lit up with texts from my mother. "How dare you? She just wanted to see her daughter. You've turned her into a criminal. You'll regret this, Emily." But when I looked at my niece curled up on the couch with her doll, still safe, still breathing steady, I knew the truth. I couldn't go back. I couldn't soften. I couldn't let blood blind me anymore. The girl in that apartment wasn't just my niece. She was my responsibility, my line in the sand. Barbara had declared war, but now so had I. The restraining order came through a week later. On paper, it was protection. In reality, it was a thin wall against a storm. Barbara obeyed at first, too quiet, too compliant. The silence was worse than the threats. It meant she was planning. It happened on a Saturday evening. Mark had taken our niece to a friend's birthday party. I stayed behind, finally letting myself breathe in the quiet. I was loading dishes when I heard it 3 sharp knocks at the door. Not Mark's knock, not the neighbor's. I froze, every nerve screaming. Then her voice low, almost tender. "Emily, open up. We need to talk." I didn't move. "I'm not here to fight." Barbara continued. I need to see her. One hug, 1 minute. You know what it feels like to lose a child you never had. Don't take mine away completely." Her words hit like daggers aimed at the deepest wound in me. I gripped the counter, my knuckles white. "Barbara." I forced my voice steady. "You left her. At an airport. Alone. You've had chance after chance, and every time you chose yourself." Silence. Then a laugh, sharp and broken. "You think you're her mother now? You think because you cook her mac and cheese and braid her hair that you've replaced me?" The doorknob rattled. Hard. "Barbara, stop. The police will..." The door slammed once, twice. She was trying to break it down. I backed away, fumbling for my phone. "Do you know what Mom and Dad said to me?" She screamed through the wood. "They said you always wanted to take my place. That you were jealous. That you'd never be enough." And they were right. Each word was a whip crack designed to slice me open. But then sirens. Red and blue lights flared against the window. Mark must have seen the alerts from the cameras and called. Barbara's pounding stopped. Her shadow lingered for a moment, then disappeared down the hallway. The officers caught her in the parking lot. This time, it wasn't just trespassing. It was violation of a court order, attempted forced entry. She was taken away, screaming my name like a curse. When Mark and my niece returned, she ran into my arms, asking why there were police cars outside. I swallowed the truth, kissed her hair, and said, "Because sometimes sweetheart grown-ups make bad choices. But you're safe. I promise you're safe." That night, after she fell asleep, Mark sat across from me, his voice low. "She won't stop, Emily. You know that, right? As long as she has breath, she'll keep coming." I nodded, staring at the ceiling. He was right. Barbara's war wasn't just about custody. It was about control, about proving she still held power over me, over all of us. But as I looked at the little girl tucked safely in bed, I knew one thing: Barbara might keep fighting. But so would I. And the difference between us was simple. My fight wasn't for pride or for control. It was for love. Thank you for watching the story until the end. Please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support means the world.